The story begins on Christmas Eve in Spain. Manel, a lawyer and the owner of an energy company, along with his wife Julia, are seen visiting the family of his older sister, Belén, and her husband. Because they don't want to stay overnight, they both decide to head back home that same evening. During the drive, a heated argument ensues between Manel and Julia, since Manel apparently hasn't even thought about having a child. As a result of this argument, their vehicle unexpectedly crashes, and Julia tragically loses her life in the accident. One year has passed since that horrible incident, which claimed the life of Manel's wife. Manel is now living in a state of deep depression, often isolating himself with his cat, Luculo. In fact, he's become so withdrawn that he pays no attention to the news broadcasts on TV about a dangerous virus called TSJ, which has reportedly spread rapidly across Europe. Meanwhile, the Spanish government is desperately trying to keep the outbreak hidden from its citizens. Manel is so unconcerned with his surroundings that he doesn't even bother answering calls from his sister Belén. However, when Manel finally does manage to speak with Belén, he learns that she and her family are about to be evacuated to the Canary Islands in an effort to prevent the spread of the virus, which has become headline news all over Spain. The next morning, just as Manel attempts to join his sister, the authorities suddenly close all borders and declare a state of emergency. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Belén calls Manel again to inform him about the lockdown and urges him to return to his home because of the unfolding crisis. On his way back, the streets are crowded to the point of being completely jammed. Unable to move any further by car, Manel decides to go home on foot. As he nears his neighborhood, he witnesses members of the military arresting one of his neighbors, who has apparently been infected with the TSJ virus. The following day, news about the spread of a new variant of the TSJ virus causes many European countries to enforce strict isolation measures, including Spain and the city where Manel currently resides. With limited options, Manel focuses on gathering as many supplies as he can. While searching various stores for food, Manel sees how those infected by the virus will relentlessly attack anyone who is still healthy. At one point, Manel barely escapes, thanks to a wounded police officer who steps in to help him. Terrified by this incident, Manel rushes back home and barricades his house against any intruders. By now, the government has declared martial law and instructed all citizens to follow orders. If told to remain in their homes, they must stay put, and if they are to be evacuated, they have no choice but to comply. The problem is, Manel refuses to be evacuated. This decision is based on a request from his sister Belén, who told him not to go with the soldiers. She promised that she would come for him later.
¡Es una orden! ¡Abre la puerta! Esto no se abre. Vámonos.
2 weeks go by with Manel barricaded inside his home, his food supplies nearly depleted, and his communication lines cut off. He has no idea what has become of his sister's family. Forced by desperation, Manel decides to venture out and look for more provisions. While searching around his neighborhood, he unexpectedly encounters an elderly woman named Gabriela, who also avoided evacuation because she can only move around with a wheelchair. With Gabriela's help, Manel manages to gather more food and drinks from various houses that Gabriela points out. Manel even acquires a motorcycle to make his scavenging runs easier. Later that night, Manel and Gabriela enjoy the hard-earned supplies they've collected. Early the next morning, they hear a radio broadcast instructing any survivors to head toward the estuary, where they will be evacuated to the Canary Islands. On hearing this news, Gabriela appears worried, because she believes the estuary area is already infected. Still, since their food stores will run out sooner or later, Manel decides to head there with Gabriela using his boat. However, the following day, when Manel arrives to pick Gabriela up, he finds out she has taken her own life. Gabriela did this because she felt she would become a burden to Manel if they went together. Moments after leaving Gabriela's house, Manel is suddenly attacked by an infected individual. He survives only by fighting off the attacker with his fishing spear, which he has been carrying as a makeshift weapon. Immediately afterward, Manel and his cat Luculo set off toward the harbor on his motorcycle. The journey is fraught with obstacles. Some roads are blocked, and he faces hordes of infected that almost claim his life. Fortunately, Manel finds a path through and manages to slip into a relatively clear route, hoping there might be other survivors. Alas, there appears to be no one else around. Realizing he cannot remain there, Manel decides to inflate a rubber raft and continue his journey to the estuary. Nightfall comes, and Manel is unexpectedly discovered by a group of armed Ukrainian sailors, led by their captain Usankov. One of the captain's men, Victor, informs Manel that the island he's attempting to reach, where he hopes to find his sister, has supposedly been placed under total quarantine. Victor also says that if Manel's goal is truly to get to the Canary Islands, they want Manel's assistance in gathering supplies in the area. Before going to sleep that night, Manel glimpses from his cabin window what seems to be a group of new refugees arriving and asking for help. Strangely, the next morning Victor claims that no new arrivals have shown up, except Manel. Growing suspicious, Manel soon discovers proof. He stumbles upon some of the ship's crew, rummaging through the belongings of those refugees, implying they were either killed or captured. Feeling unsafe, Manel confronts Victor about the incident, while also hinting that there's a helicopter parked at a hospital located before the Canary Islands. Manel's knowledge comes from the fact that this is where his wife died. Manel hopes Victor will allow him to escape if he shares this information. However, Manel's plan fails, so he chooses to flee on his own. While trying to escape, Manel finds 2 refugees being held in the cargo hold. He attempts to free them, but is discovered by a guard who quickly shoots one of the detainees. Fortunately for Manel, Victor shows up at that exact moment and kills the guard, saving Manel from certain death. With no time to lose, the 3 of them attempt to flee using a motorboat. Sadly, they're spotted, and the remaining refugees end up being killed, while Victor is shot in his left shoulder. They do manage to reach land, where they continue on with a car they find abandoned along the road. When Manel and Victor reach the hospital, they discover that the helicopter is no longer there. Out of options, Manel reluctantly decides to take Victor inside the building to treat his injuries. As they search for medicine, Manel realizes there are indeed other people hiding in this hospital. Sure enough, while navigating around and dealing with infected, Manel encounters a nurse named Lucia, a nun named Cecilia, and 3 children who are with them.
Rápido.
Shortly after Victor's surgery and recovery, Lucia reveals that there's another helicopter parked in the courtyard, which is swarming with infected. The only path to get there is via an underground passageway, though Lucia can't guarantee it will be safe. Early the next day, Usankov's men suddenly appear at the hospital to search for more supplies. Realizing they are in danger, Manel urges everyone to evacuate through the underground complex. During this escape, they're attacked by a zombie and Cecilia is bitten. Unfortunately, they have no choice but to leave her behind. In the end, after a series of narrow escapes, those who survive make it to the helicopter. However, right before they can take off, they're confronted by Usankov and his group. Running out of options, Manel, who is still outside, decides to open the gate that has been keeping the infected out. Chaos ensues as the zombies flood in and attack Usankov and his men. With that, Manel finally manages to board the helicopter, and they all fly toward the Canary Islands. As they approach the islands, Manel suddenly receives a signal on his phone and manages to contact his sister, Belen. But the moment Manel announces that he's almost there, Belen panics and warns him to stay away. Immediately afterward, 2 fighter jets appear to be heading toward the same destination, suggesting that the outbreak may already have reached the Canary Islands as well. And with that, the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing, you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.